The first thing I noticed wasn't the music. It wasn't the flowers. It wasn't even the fact that I was about to marry a man I barely knew. It was my mother's grip on my wrist, tight enough to hurt, like she was afraid I'd run. And honestly, I wanted to, because 3 rows back, sitting like he owned the air in the room, was Ethan Carter, the man my parents destroyed, the man they called a mistake, the man they swore would never be part of our family. And he didn't look broken. He didn't look desperate. He didn't look like the loser they tried to turn him into. He looked calm, too calm. I stood at the front of the chapel beside Ryan Whitmore, my groom, my safe choice, my parents' approved replacement, while my father smiled like he'd won a war. But Ethan's eyes stayed on me, and in that stare was a message that made my stomach twist. This isn't over. My knees nearly buckled when the officiant began. I could still hear my father's voice from months ago. Choose Ethan and you're no longer our daughter. So I didn't choose Ethan. I chose survival. I chose peace. Or at least I thought I did. The officiant asked if anyone had objections. That's when Ethan stood. The room froze, like someone turned off gravity. My mother's face drained. My father's smile snapped, like glass cracking under pressure. Ethan didn't shout. He didn't insult anyone. He just said, clearly and evenly, "I'm not here to ruin this wedding. I'm here to tell the truth, because you all deserve to know what really happened." And then he turned toward my parents. And I have proof. Proof of what? And why did my father look like he'd just seen a ghost? You know that feeling when your body reacts before your brain does? That was me. My hands started shaking before I even understood why. Ethan stood there in the back, one hand in his jacket pocket like he was waiting for a bus, not interrupting a wedding. His voice hadn't wavered, not even a little. The officiant stammered, "Sir, this is..." Ethan lifted a finger politely, just 60 seconds. Then he looked at me, not with anger, not with heartbreak, with something worse, clarity. And in that clarity was the silent question, did you really think they'd let you go without paying for it? My mother leaned forward in her seat, whispering sharply, "Someone get him out." 2 of my father's friends, big men, expensive suits, cheap loyalty, shifted like they were ready to drag Ethan away. But Ethan took one slow step into the aisle, and the crowd parted, because people can sense when a storm is coming. He said, "My name is Ethan Carter. Some of you know me as the guy the Harringtons saved their daughter from." A few guests chuckled nervously, like they were unsure if laughing would get them punished. Ethan continued, "I was told I wasn't good enough, that I didn't come from the right family, that I didn't have the right future." He paused, glancing at my father. And maybe that's true, if your definition of a future is something you can buy. My father's jaw tightened. "Ethan, you're making a scene." Ethan nodded once. "No, I'm ending one." Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black folder. Not dramatic, not flashy, just heavy. My heart slammed against my ribs. Ryan, beside me, whispered, "Is that your ex?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Ethan spoke again, and his words hit like ice water. 6 months ago, I proposed to Madison Harrington. A wave of murmurs rolled through the chapel. My mother's nails dug into the armrest. Ethan said, "She said yes." My vision blurred for a second. I remembered it like it was a wound that never closed. Ethan's hands shaking as he opened the ring box. My laugh, my tears, the way it felt like the world finally made sense. Then my father's voice shattered it. "You can't marry him." Ethan's gaze didn't move from my parents. But a week later, she broke it off. No explanation, just silence. That part was true, because that's what they forced me to do. He lifted the folder slightly. Today, I'm going to explain why. Ryan's hand tightened around mine, not comforting, possessive, like I was a contract. And suddenly, I understood something terrifying. Ryan wasn't confused. He wasn't surprised Ethan was here. He looked annoyed, like Ethan was messing up the schedule. Ethan said, "I'm not here to beg. I'm not here to win her back. He glanced at me, softer now. Madison deserves to make her own choices, even if that choice isn't me. Then he looked back at my father. But nobody deserves to be manipulated, cornered, and threatened into a marriage. The air changed. Not everyone believed him yet, but everyone was listening now. My father stood up slowly. This is ridiculous. My mother rose too, smiling like a knife. Ethan, honey, this isn't the place. Ethan nodded. You're right. And that's why I brought the place to you. He opened the folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper and said the words that made my blood run cold. Madison didn't leave me because she stopped loving me. She left because her parents staged a scandal and threatened to ruin her life if she didn't obey. And then Ethan lifted the paper toward the crowd. It's all here. Names, dates, payments. Payments? To who? The moment Ethan said payments, my father lunged forward like he could erase the word out of the air. Give me that, my father barked. Not ask, not explain, demand. Ethan didn't flinch. He held the paper higher, just out of reach, like he'd expected this exact reaction. And the guests saw it too. Not the details, yet, but the panic. Because when someone innocent is accused, they get angry. When someone guilty is exposed, they get desperate. My mother laughed a little, high and unnatural. Ethan, you've always been dramatic. Ethan tilted his head. And you've always been expensive. A few gasps, a few nervous coughs, then silence again. Ethan turned to the crowd. Quick question. What would you do if your daughter fell in love with someone you couldn't control? He let that hang, and I swear half the room avoided my parents' eyes. Then he said, "You do what they did." He looked directly at me. Madison, do you remember the night you got that anonymous email? My throat tightened. Of course I remembered. It was a Friday night. Ethan and I were on my couch eating takeout, laughing about nothing. My phone buzzed. Subject line, "Your boyfriend is using you." Inside were photos. Photos of Ethan outside a bank, photos of him meeting a man in a parking garage, screenshots of messages, dirty, greedy messages about using Madison Harrington for access. It looked real. It felt real. And my parents were already waiting in the living room when I ran downstairs crying, like they knew, like they'd been expecting it. My mother hugged me like she was saving me from a fire. My father said, "We warned you." And Ethan was left outside, calling my name, confused, begging me to talk. I never let him in. Ethan's voice cut through my memory. Those messages were fake. The room erupted, half disbelief, half curiosity. But Ethan wasn't finished. He held up another paper. A private investigator traced the email. He turned to my father. It came from a laptop registered to your company. My father's face went pale so fast it was almost unreal. Ryan finally spoke, his voice low. This is insane. Ethan looked at him for the first time, not with jealousy, with recognition, like Ryan wasn't the main villain, just a pawn who thought he was a king. Ethan said, "Ryan Whitmore, investment banker, big promotion last year, nice suit." Ryan stiffened. "What's your point?" Ethan smiled, just barely. "My point is, you didn't meet Madison by accident." I felt the world tilt, because Ryan did meet me randomly, at a charity gala my parents forced me to attend. He spilled a drink, apologized, smiled, and somehow ended up being the man my parents adored within a month. Too perfect, too fast. Ethan looked at the guests. "Wanna know what those payments were for?" He raised the paper again. Madison's parents paid someone to fabricate evidence that I was a fraud. My mother snapped. "That's a lie." Ethan nodded. "Then you won't mind if I read the invoice out loud." My father shouted, "Stop." Ethan's eyes hardened, and he said the sentence that made my chest go hollow. "They didn't just sabotage me. They sabotaged you, Madison. They sold your future like it was a business deal." I stared at my parents. My mother's smile was gone. My father's hands were trembling.
And then the worst part happened. Ryan leaned toward my father and whispered, thinking nobody could hear, but the microphone on the altar picked it up. Ryan said, "Sir, handle him, or I will." The entire room heard it, and suddenly, I wasn't sure who my real groom was.
When Ryan's threat echoed through the speakers, the room didn't just go silent. People physically leaned back like the air turned dangerous. The officiant stepped away from the microphone, like it might explode. One of the bridesmaids whispered, "Oh my God," and my mother, for the first time in her life, looked uncertain. I turned toward Ryan slowly. "What did you just say?" Ryan's face tightened. "Madison, it wasn't..." But his eyes flicked to my father, quick and sharp, a signal. My father lifted his chin like a general who'd been challenged. "This is over," he said. "Ethan, leave." Ethan didn't move. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "I expected you'd say that." He tapped the screen, and my father's phone, sitting in his suit pocket, buzzed. That tiny vibration changed everything, because my father's eyes widened, and for a split second, he looked afraid of his own device. Ethan spoke calmly. "You remember the PI. He didn't just trace the email, he found the trail." He looked around the room. "Would you like to see the trail?" Now, I want you to imagine being me in that moment, in a white dress, in front of everyone, with your life split into two versions, the one you were forced into and the one you lost. What would you do? Would you freeze? Would you run? Or would you demand answers no matter who got burned? Because my voice surprised even me. "Show it," I said. My mother whipped around. "Madison!" But I didn't look at her. I looked at Ethan. And Ethan nodded, like he'd been waiting for me to finally step into my own life. He said, "Okay." He walked forward, slow, respectful. He didn't rush the altar. He didn't grab me. He didn't act like some jealous ex. He acted like a man who came prepared and done being polite. He held the phone up to the wedding videographer. "Plug this into your system." The videographer hesitated, looking at my father. My father shook his head violently, but the guests were watching now, and the videographer, probably realizing this footage would be priceless, plugged it in. The big screen behind the altar flickered. The room held its breath. A list appeared. Emails, bank transfers, names, dates, amounts. My mother whispered, "No!" My father's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then Ethan said, "Here's the invoice from a reputation management firm." He highlighted a line, "Service, character assassination plus digital evidence fabrication." Gasps exploded across the hall. He scrolled again. "Here's the payment from Harrington Holdings." And there it was, my father's signature authorization. Then Ethan paused. "And here," he said quietly, "is the second payment." I swallowed. "Second?" Ethan nodded. "You didn't just pay to destroy me." He clicked. A new document opened. A contract. My mother stood abruptly. "Turn that off." But it was too late. People were reading. The top line said, "Marriage Alliance Agreement." The words didn't make sense at first, like reading a language you don't want to understand. Then my eyes found the names. Ryan Whitmore, Madison Harrington, Harrington Holdings. And one phrase burned into me like a brand. "In exchange for marriage, Whitmore family will facilitate acquisition approvals and secure board access." It wasn't a love story, it was a transaction. Ryan's face went white. My father looked like he might collapse. And my mother stared at me like I was ruining her day. Ethan's voice softened, just enough to hurt. "They didn't protect you, Madison." He glanced at your dress, the altar, the crowd. "They sold you." I turned to Ryan, my fiancé, my supposed future, and whispered, "So you never loved me?" Ryan opened his mouth, and what he said next shattered the last piece of my innocence. Ryan didn't deny it fast enough. That's the part people don't talk about. If someone truly loves you, the answer comes instantly. But Ryan hesitated. Just a heartbeat, long enough for the truth to crawl out. Then he forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Madison, of course I care about you." Care. Not love, not even close. I pulled my hand from his like it burned. "Did you know about the contract?" I asked. Ryan's jaw worked. "Your parents explained it was normal. Families do this." Normal. Like buying a house, like merging companies, like trading a daughter. My mother stepped forward, voice sweet as poison. "Madison, don't embarrass yourself. This is business." I stared at her. "My life isn't business." My father finally spoke, voice shaking with rage. "You're being manipulated by him." He pointed at Ethan like Ethan was the criminal, not the man holding proof. He came here to humiliate us. Ethan didn't react. He simply said, "No, you humiliated yourselves." Then he added the line that made the guests whisper again. "I came to give Madison the choice you stole from her." I turned toward Ethan, and my chest tightened, because I realized something awful. Ethan hadn't come for revenge. He'd come for truth. And truth, real truth, is the most brutal form of revenge in a family like mine. I looked out at the crowd, people my parents invited to witness their victory. Now they were witnessing their exposure. One of my aunts muttered, "I always knew something was off." A cousin whispered, "Is this why she broke up with Ethan?" And suddenly my parents' perfect reputation, the thing they worshipped like a god, started bleeding in public. Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Madison, listen, we can handle this privately. We can still what?" I snapped. "Still marry so your family gets board access?" Ryan's eyes flashed with something dark. "You don't understand what's at stake." That was the moment I understood everything. Ryan wasn't here for me. Ryan was here for the Harrington name, for the Harrington power, for the Harrington money. And my parents? They weren't scared I'd be unhappy. They were scared I'd choose a man they couldn't own. Ethan's voice cut through the chaos. "One more thing," he said. My father barked. "No!" Ethan smiled slightly. "Yes." He clicked again on his phone, and the screen changed, this time to an audio file, a recording. My stomach dropped. Recordings are different than documents. Documents can be argued. Recordings can be heard. Ethan looked directly at my mother. "You said something the night Madison got that email." His voice turned cold. "You told her, if you don't leave him, we'll make sure he never works in this city again." My mother's lips parted. She tried to speak. Nothing came out. Ethan pressed play, and my mother's voice filled the hall. "He'll be done, Madison. We'll ruin him. You'll marry who we choose, and you'll thank us later." Someone gasped so loudly it sounded like a choke. My father slammed his fist onto a pew. "Turn it off," he roared. But it was already too late. Because people weren't just hearing my mother. They were hearing who my family truly was behind closed doors. I felt tears rise, not from sadness, from rage. I looked at my parents and whispered, "You didn't just break my heart." My voice cracked. "You tried to break his life." Ethan's eyes met mine, and for the first time that day, I saw pain flicker through his calm. He'd survived, but it had cost him something. Then Ethan said something I didn't expect. He looked at Ryan. "And you?" Ryan stiffened. Ethan continued, "You weren't just the groom. You were part of the setup." Ryan's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" Ethan's voice lowered. "You and my former employer, you know each other, don't you?" I blinked. Former employer? Ethan clicked again. A photo appeared on the screen. Ryan, standing beside Ethan's old boss, smiling at a private club event. The date stamp read, 2 weeks before the scandal email was sent. My breath caught. Ryan didn't meet me by accident, so how long had he been planning to marry me? Ryan's face did something strange when that photo showed up. Like the mask slipped just for a second. Then he snapped back into control. "That proves nothing," he said quickly. Too quickly. Ethan nodded like he expected that response. You're right, he said. One photo doesn't prove anything. He glanced at me. But patterns do. And that word, patterns, hit me hard because my whole life had been patterns. My parents deciding what I wore, who I dated, which friends were acceptable, what career path was good for the family, and now even my weighing. Ethan turned to the guests again. Have any of you noticed how fast this relationship happened? Murmurs, heads turning. Some people nodded reluctantly. My grandmother looked down at her lap like she couldn't bear to see it out loud. Ethan said, Madison met Ryan at a gala arranged by your parents. My mother scoffed. We host events, that's what we do. Ethan didn't look at her. He looked at me. Madison, did you ever wonder why he was the only one who accidentally bumped into you? I remembered the night, the way Ryan immediately knew my name, the way he complimented my scholarship work, even though I'd barely spoken about it publicly, the way he seemed to know what to say at every moment. It hadn't felt like romance. It had felt like strategy wearing cologne. I whispered, How did you know all this? Ethan's eyes softened. Because after you left, I stopped feeling sorry for myself. He held up his phone. I started digging. My father stepped forward, voice booming. You're trespassing. You're harassing our family. A guest near the front cut in. Is that contract real, Richard? My father froze. Because when the right people start questioning you, power suddenly isn't as loud. My mother tried to regain control, voice calm. This is all taken out of context. Madison is happy. I laughed, one short, sharp sound that surprised even me. Happy? I looked at Ryan. Are you happy? I asked him. Ryan's smile didn't move. I'm committed, he said. Committed. Like a corporate deal. I stepped away from him and faced Ethan. What do you want? I asked. The room held its breath because everyone expected Ethan to say, Take me back. Run away with me. Cancel the wedding. But Ethan said something else. I want you to know this. He nodded toward the screen. They didn't just destroy me. They tried to trap you. He paused. And there's one last thing you need to see before you decide what to do. My pulse pounded. Decide? No one had said that word to me in months. My father barked. She doesn't need to decide anything. She's getting married. Ethan's gaze snapped to him. She's not property. That sentence cracked the room open because deep down, everyone knew in families like mine, daughters are often treated like leverage. Ethan clicked again, and this time a spreadsheet appeared. My father lunged toward the screen, but two guests, two of his biggest donors, stood up and blocked him without even touching him. Just their presence, their status, their silent warning, not today. Ethan said, This is from Whitmore Capital, Ryan's firm. Ryan snapped. How did you get that? Ethan smiled without humor. You'd be amazed what people will hand over when they realize they were lied to, too. He highlighted a line item, Harrington Acquisition, completion contingent upon marriage alliance. My stomach turned. It wasn't just my parents pushing this. Ryan's side needed it too. This was a two-family trap. Ethan said, Madison, they needed you to sign the marriage certificate because the deal triggers the moment you become Mrs. Whitmore. I felt sick. My name was the switch that would turn their money machine on. Ethan looked at me like he could see the war inside my chest. I'm not telling you what to do, he said quietly. I'm telling you what they did. I looked at my parents, at Ryan, at the guests watching like it was a courtroom. And then my father said the one thing that finally made my blood boil over. If you walk away, Madison, you'll lose everything. Everything. He meant money. He meant status. He meant the family name. But I heard something else. He meant you'll lose us. My voice came out steady. Then maybe I should. My mother gasped. Ryan stepped forward, panic flashing for the first time. Madison, don't be stupid. And that word, stupid, was the last match. I turned to the officiant and said loud enough for everyone to hear, Stop the ceremony.
But before anyone could react, my father reached into his pocket and did something that made Ethan's calm finally break.
My father pulled out his phone and dialed. Not 911, not security. Someone else. Someone he trusted more than the law. Ethan's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, his voice sharpened. Don't. My father lifted the phone to his ear and smiled, slow, ugly. You think you can embarrass me in front of my people? He glanced at the guests like they were his possessions. You think you can walk into my daughter's wedding and survive it? I stepped forward. Dad, stop. He didn't even look at me. That hurt more than the threat. Ryan moved closer to my father, whispering, "This can still be contained." Contained, like I was an accident they needed to clean up. Ethan held his phone up again. "There are copies of everything," he said calmly, trying to regain control. "If anything happens to me, it all goes public." My father chuckled. "You really think I'm scared of public?" Then he leaned in toward the front row, speaking loud enough for everyone. "I built this family on control. Control isn't something you expose away." And then, right there in the middle of my wedding, my father said the line that made even his allies look uneasy. "My daughter will marry today, whether she wants to or not." A ripple of shock. A woman near the aisle whispered, "Did he just say that?" I felt my whole body go cold, because in that moment, I realized the truth. This wasn't persuasion anymore. This was coercion. Ethan's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, careful but firm. "Madison, you don't have to." My mother cut in sharply. "Yes, she does." She came toward me, grabbing my arm like I was 12 again. "Smile, fix your face, walk through this." I jerked my arm away. "Don't touch me." The room froze, because daughters like me don't talk like that, not in public, not to mothers like mine. Ryan spoke low, dangerous. "Madison, you're overreacting." He reached for my hand. Ethan's voice snapped. "Don't." Ryan turned, eyes flashing. "This has nothing to do with you." Ethan stepped closer, voice steady but lethal. "It has everything to do with me, because you didn't just steal a wedding." He glanced at my parents. "You stole a life." And that's when my father's phone call connected. He said, "Bring them in." 2 minutes later, the chapel doors opened, and in walked 3 men in dark suits. Not ushers, not wedding staff. Security, private. They scanned the room, and one of them made eye contact with my father like he'd been waiting for orders. My stomach dropped. This wasn't about escorting Ethan out. This was about making sure the ceremony happened, with or without my consent. Ethan's eyes flicked to the exits, then back to me, then back to my father. He whispered, almost to himself, "So that's how far you'll go." My father pointed, "Remove him." The guards started down the aisle. I screamed, "Stop!" But my voice felt small against my father's power. The guards reached Ethan. One grabbed his shoulder. Ethan didn't fight. He simply said, loud and calm, "Before you touch me, remember the microphone." The guard hesitated. The room was still recording, still watching. Ethan looked at my father. "Do it," he said. "Prove who you are." My father's face twisted, and for a second I saw it, the ugly truth behind the polished suit. Then he nodded. The guards tightened their grip. And that's when Ryan stepped forward and whispered something to the lead guard, something that made the guard's expression change instantly. The guard nodded once and grabbed Ethan harder. I felt the room tilt again, because whatever Ryan just said, it wasn't about removing Ethan. It was about punishing him. I ran toward them, dragging, hands shaking. "Let him go." My mother screamed, "Madison, you don't dare." But I didn't stop. I got between Ethan and the guards, facing my father, breathing hard, voice shaking. "If you do this, you'll never see me again." My father stared at me, and his eyes were empty. "Then you were never mine," he said. That sentence hit me like a slap, and in that moment, something inside me died, and something else woke up. I turned to Ethan and whispered, "Tell me what to do."
Ethan's eyes widened, and then he said, "Okay, but you're not going to like it."
Ethan leaned close, voice low enough that only I could hear. "You want the ceremony stopped?" he whispered. "Then you don't fight your father in the aisle. You fight him where he lives." I swallowed. "Where?" Ethan's eyes flicked to the crowd, to his reputation. He straightened and raised his voice. "Everyone," he said, "if you're filming, keep filming." Half the guests already were. Phones were up like weapons. Ethan looked at the guards. "You touch me, you confirm everything I just exposed." Then he looked at my father. "And if you force Madison into this marriage, you commit a crime in front of witnesses." My father's lip curled. "You think these people will testify against me?" Ethan nodded toward the donors blocking the aisle earlier. "Some of them will." That's when the room shifted, because suddenly it wasn't Ethan versus the Harringtons, it was truth versus the Harringtons. And truth spreads fast when rich people smell a scandal that could stain them. One of my father's biggest clients stood and said loudly, "Richard, is this true?" Another followed, "Did you forge evidence?" Another, "Did you pay to ruin this man?" My father tried to speak, but the crowd was turning into a jury. My mother snapped, "This is private." Ethan answered instantly, "Then you shouldn't have made it public by selling her in a contract." I felt my heart hammer. I turned to Ryan. He was sweating now, eyes darting, calculating. He leaned toward me, voice soft, like a man trying to calm a frightened animal. "Madison, please, walk away with me. We'll handle your parents later." Walk away with him? The man who called me stupid? The man who signed a deal with my father? I stared at him. "You don't want me," I said quietly. "You want my last name." Ryan's eyes flashed, and his voice dropped into something colder. "You have no idea what you're throwing away." I lifted my chin. "Then explain it." Ryan opened his mouth, and then stopped, realizing too late that everyone was listening. Ethan took advantage of the pause. He said, "Madison, ask them about the second scandal." My stomach dropped. "Second?" Ethan nodded. "You thought the fake email thing was their only weapon?" He looked at my parents. They had backups. I turned to my mother. "What second scandal?" I demanded. My mother's face tightened. My father's eyes flicked away. Ethan spoke for them. The night Madison agreed to marry Ryan wasn't because she wanted to. He paused. It was because her parents threatened to release a video. My lungs stopped working for a second. "A video?" I whispered. My mother snapped, "He's lying." Ethan shook his head slowly. They told her it would ruin her career, ruin her friendships, ruin her life. His voice turned sharp, and Madison, because she's been trained to protect the family name, she believed them. I felt dizzy, because yes, there was a night. A night I came home crying so hard I couldn't breathe. A night my father sat me down and said, "We can end this quietly, or you can be a disgrace forever." I never told Ethan. I never told anyone. I just broke. I whispered, "How do you know about that?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Because your mother bragged about it to someone she thought was loyal." He tapped his phone again. Another audio file. My mother's voice came through, smug and proud. "She'll marry who we tell her. We have leverage. You should have seen her face." The room erupted. Someone shouted, "That's disgusting." Someone else, "That's her daughter." My mother's shoulders stiffened. She looked around like she couldn't believe people were judging her, because in her mind, she wasn't cruel. She was successful. My father roared, "Enough." He pointed at the guards. "Get them both out." The guards advanced again, but this time, several guests stood up in the aisle, blocking them. A woman I barely knew, one of my mother's friends, said, "Richard, stop. You're making it worse." My father turned on her like a predator. "Sit down." She didn't. And that's when my father realized the scariest thing for a controlling man. He was losing control. Ryan grabbed my arm suddenly. "Madison, come with me now." His fingers dug in. Pain shot up my arm. Ethan stepped forward instantly. "Let her go." Ryan hissed, "Stay out of this." I looked down at Ryan's hand on me, and for the first time, I didn't feel confused. I felt clear. I ripped my arm free, and I raised my voice, shaking but loud. "I am not marrying you."
The chapel erupted. Gasps, whispers, shouts. My father's face turned purple. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. Ryan's eyes went dead. And then Ryan did something no one expected. He smiled. Not a sweet smile, a warning smile. He leaned in and whispered only for me, "You think Ethan saved you?" His breath was cold. 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 He said, "Ask him who paid for his investigation."
Ryan's words hit me like a punch to the throat. Ask him who paid for his investigation. I turned to Ethan, my chest tight, because for the first time all day, doubt tried to creep back in. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Ryan," he said calmly, "don't." Ryan lifted both hands like he was innocent. "I'm just saying, truth matters, right?" The crowd leaned forward again, hungry for the next twist. My father looked suddenly interested too, like Ryan had just offered him a lifeline. My mother's voice sharpened. "Yes, Madison, ask him." I hated that she was using anything to try to regain control, but I looked at Ethan anyway. "Who paid for it?" I asked, voice shaking. Ethan exhaled slowly. Then he said, "I did." Ryan laughed. "Really? With what money, Ethan?" The insult landed, because everyone knew Ethan didn't come from wealth. He worked, he earned, he built. Ethan nodded once. "With the money your little scheme accidentally gave me." The room blinked. "What?" someone whispered. Ethan looked at me, and his voice softened. "Madison, remember the week after you broke up with me?" I nodded, throat tight. I remembered crying until my face hurt. I remembered my parents comforting me like wolves wearing human faces. Ethan continued. "I got fired, overnight, no warning." He turned to the guests. "My employer claimed I violated policy." He smiled bitter, but they couldn't show me what policy. Then Ethan held up his phone again. And then, 2 months later, something weird happened. He clicked. A bank statement appeared. A transfer. A big one. The memo line read, "Settlement. Wrongful termination." Murmurs erupted. My father's eyes widened. Ryan's smile faltered for the first time. Ethan said, "Someone panicked." He looked straight at Ryan. "Your friend, my ex-boss, realized what you forced him into was illegal. He paid me to keep quiet." Ryan snapped. "That's not—" Ethan cut him off, voice sharper. "You know what's funny?" He leaned slightly forward. "That settlement paid for my PI, my lawyer, and the entire digital trail you're watching right now." The crowd buzzed. That wasn't just poetic justice. That was family revenge story level irony, the kind that makes people sit up and say, "No way." Ethan continued. "So yes, Madison, I paid for it." He looked at my parents. "With money your corruption created." My father's face contorted. "You're twisting." A guest shouted. "Richard, did you threaten your own daughter?" Another. "Did you pay to ruin this man?" Another. "Is that marriage contract real?" My father's world was collapsing in real time. And then Ryan stepped forward, voice icy. "Fine," he said, "let's talk about real truth." He reached into his own pocket and pulled out a small flash drive. The crowd gasped again, because nobody comes to a wedding with a flash drive unless they expect a war. Ryan held it up. "I've got something too." My stomach dropped, because I suddenly realized Ryan had been prepared for Ethan, prepared for me, prepared for the possibility that I would refuse. Ryan smiled at my parents. "You want her to walk?" he asked them. "Fine, let her." My mother's eyes widened. My father looked confused. Ryan turned to the guests. "Because if she walks, everyone here gets to see who Ethan really is." Ethan's face went still, too still. Ryan looked at me and said sweetly, "Madison, you think you knew him." He tilted the flash drive.
But did you know he wasn't just working hard? Then Ryan dropped the bomb. Did you know Ethan has a criminal record? The room erupted, full chaos now. People shouting, people gasping, phones recording. My heart stopped. I looked at Ethan, desperate. "Ethan," I asked. Ethan didn't speak immediately, and that silence was terrifying, because innocence talks fast, guilt hesitates. Ethan finally said, "It's not what he's saying." Ryan grinned. "Oh, it's exactly what I'm saying." He pointed toward the screen system. "Plug it in." The videographer hesitated again, this time looking at me, and I, standing there in my wedding dress, exposed in front of everyone, whispered, "Do it," because I needed to know, even if it destroyed me. The screen flickered, a file opened, and the first word that appeared made my blood turn to ice. Arrest.
The word arrest on that screen didn't just shock the room, it shocked me. Because I'd loved Ethan. I'd trusted him with my whole heart, and suddenly every guest looked at him like he was a stranger. Ryan's voice carried like he'd rehearsed it. "Ladies and gentlemen, meet Ethan Carter." He clicked through the file like a salesman presenting a product. "Arrested at 19. He glanced at me. "Assault." My knees nearly buckled. My mother let out a small, satisfied breath, like this was the comeback she'd prayed for. My father's face lit with cruel relief. Ryan turned to the crowd, playing his role perfectly. "Madison, I didn't want to do this," he lied smoothly, "but you forced my hand." I stared at Ethan, my throat burning. "Is it true?" I whispered. Ethan's eyes didn't leave mine, and he said quietly, "Yes." The room exploded again. Someone shouted, "I knew it!" Someone else, "That's insane!" I felt like the walls were closing in. My entire body screamed to run, but I couldn't. I needed to understand. Ethan took a slow breath. Then he said something that made the noise drop just a little. "Before you decide who I am, let me tell you who I fought." Ryan scoffed. "Oh, please." Ethan ignored him. Ethan spoke directly to the guests now, voice steady. "At 19, my mom was sick. Medical debt. We were drowning." He paused, and I saw something raw in his eyes. "My stepfather, an addict, came home drunk and tried to take my mom's pain meds." A hush fell. Ethan continued, "When I stopped him, he hit her, hard." My stomach twisted. Ethan said, "I snapped. I hit him back. I kept hitting him until someone pulled me off." He swallowed. "And yes, I got arrested." The room felt different now. Not because everyone believed him, but because the story had a heartbeat, a reason. Ryan tried to cut in. "Touching story, still violent." Ethan turned his head slightly. "You want to talk about violence, Ryan?" His voice sharpened. "Let's talk about the violence of buying a woman." Gasps. My mother snapped, "Stop twisting this." Ethan looked back at me. "Madison, did I ever hurt you?" he asked gently. I shook my head, tears blurring everything. "No." Ethan nodded. "That's why Ryan waited until today," he gestured to the screen, "because he didn't want you to ask questions. He wanted you cornered." Ryan's smile faltered again. "Watch your mouth." Ethan stepped forward, voice quiet and lethal. "I'm done watching it." Then Ethan did something that made my heart jump. He held up his own phone again. I knew Ryan would try this. Ryan's eyes widened. "Bull!" Ethan clicked, and a new file appeared, a sealed court document. Across the top, "Case dismissed." Ethan said, "My stepfather admitted what happened." He glanced at the guests. "The charges were dropped." The room stirred, confusion, doubt, then anger directed in two different directions now. Ryan snapped, "That doesn't erase the arrest." Ethan nodded. "No, it doesn't." He looked at me. "I never told you because I was ashamed, because I wanted to be more than my worst day." That honesty punched me in the chest because it sounded like Ethan. Real, imperfect, human. Ryan's eyes darted, calculating again. Then he leaned toward my parents. "Plan B," he muttered. I caught it, and Ethan caught it too. Ethan's posture stiffened. "What's Plan B?" I demanded, voice rising. Ryan looked at me with a dead calm that terrified me. "You're not walking out of here with him," he said. And then he raised his voice for everyone to hear.
Because if you cancel this wedding, your father's deal collapses. He pointed at the guests, and a lot of people in this room lose a lot of money. The room froze because he just reminded everyone they weren't just witnesses, they were investors. Ryan continued, "So here's what's going to happen." He smiled. "You're going to finish the ceremony." My father stared at him, stunned. Even my father hadn't dared to say it that bluntly. Ryan took one step toward me, and I realized with horror, this wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a hostage situation dressed in white. I backed up, shaking. Ethan stepped between us. Ryan's voice dropped to a whisper only I could hear. "If you choose Ethan, I'll release the video your parents threatened you with myself."
Ryan's threat made my stomach drop so hard it felt like falling through the floor. He knew about the video. He had it, or could get it, which meant my parents hadn't just used it to control me, they'd handed the weapon to him too. Ethan's eyes flicked to my face. He could tell something just happened. "What did he say?" Ethan asked quietly. I couldn't answer yet. My throat wouldn't work. Ryan stepped back and addressed the room again, voice smooth. "Look, everyone, this is getting ugly." He spread his hands like a hero. "But we can still make this beautiful." Beautiful. Like truth was just bad lighting. My father cleared his throat. He was trying to regain authority, but he looked shaken now because Ryan was no longer following his script. "Ryan," my father said carefully, "this is family business." Ryan smiled at him. "No, sir." His smile sharpened. "It's everyone's business. That's why you invited half the city." My mother's face went tight. She was realizing the deal she made, marrying me off, had brought a predator into our home. And then, in the middle of all this, Ethan whispered to me, "Madison, you don't have to protect their secrets anymore." Protect their secrets. My whole life flashed in pieces. Every time I swallowed my anger to keep peace, every time I apologized for their cruelty so we could look perfect, every time I sacrificed something small until the sacrifices became my whole life. I turned to my parents, and I asked the question I'd never dared ask out loud. Why? My mother's eyes flickered. My father's jaw clenched. "Why did you hate Ethan so much?" I asked, voice trembling. "He never hurt me. He loved me." My father exploded. "Because he was nothing." The room jolted. My father shouted. He didn't have connections. He didn't have wealth. He didn't have power. He pointed at Ethan. "And you, my daughter, were about to throw away everything we built for that?" Ethan's voice stayed calm. "You didn't build it. You bought it." My father stepped forward like he might swing. The guards shifted again. The guests tensed. And that's when something unexpected happened. My grandmother stood up, slowly, shaking, but standing. She looked at my father, her son, and said, "Richard, sit down." The room froze, because nobody told Richard Harrington what to do. My father turned, shocked. "Mother, you don't understand." My grandmother's voice was quiet, but it cut through everything. "Oh, I understand." She looked at me, eyes wet. "I understand because I lived it." My heart stopped. "What?" I whispered. She took a breath like it hurt. "When I was your age, Richard, my parents forced me into a marriage too." Gasps rippled. She continued. "They told me love was childish. They told me duty was everything." Her eyes hardened, and it ruined me. My mother's face looked like she'd been slapped. My father looked terrified. My grandmother pointed a trembling finger at his hymn. "You promised you'd never do this to your child." Her voice cracked. "And you did it anyway." The crowd was dead silent now. Even Ryan looked uneasy, because this wasn't a business move. This was generational truth cracking open. I looked at my father. "Is that why you're like this?" I asked softly. "Because someone did it to you and you turned it into tradition?" My father's eyes flashed. "Don't psychoanalyze me," he snapped. Then he looked at the guards again. "Enough. Remove Ethan." But my grandmother spoke again. "No." My father turned. "What did you say?" My grandmother lifted her chin. "I said no." She looked at the crowd. "If you touch that boy, I will tell everyone here what I know about Harrington Holdings." My father's face drained. My mother's eyes widened in fear.
Ryan's expression sharpened, interested. I stared at my grandmother. "What do you know?" I whispered. My grandmother's eyes met mine. "The real reason your father is terrified today," she said, "isn't the wedding." She paused. "It's the audit." The audit word hit the room like thunder. My father whispered, "Mother, don't." And I realized this story was bigger than my heartbreak. It was about to become a family collapse.
That one word explains something I'd never understood about my father. Why he was always afraid of exposure, even while acting untouchable. Ryan stepped forward, eyes bright like a man who smelled profit. "An audit?" he repeated. "Now that's interesting." My father snapped. "This is not the time." Ethan looked at my grandmother with quiet respect. "What audit?" he asked gently. My grandmother's hands trembled, but her voice stayed steady. "The state launched an investigation into Harrington Holdings 2 months ago." Gasps. She continued, "Unreported income, offshore transfers, fake menders." My mother looked like she might faint. My father hissed, "Stop talking." But my grandmother didn't stop. She looked directly at me. "Madison, your father forced this marriage because he needs the Whitmore alliance to shield him." Shield him. Not help me, not protect our family, protect him. Ryan's expression shifted, calculating. "So that's why you were so eager," he said to my father. "You're desperate." My father turned on him. "You're not in control here." Ryan smiled. "Oh, Richard." Then he looked at me, voice silky. "This is what I tried to tell you. There's more at stake." And suddenly I saw it. Ryan didn't care about saving my parents. He cared about owning their weakness. Ethan stepped forward, voice sharp. "Madison doesn't owe any of you protection." Ryan laughed. "Sure, let her walk. But if she does, the deal collapses." He looked at the guests. "And then everyone here starts asking why Harrington's stock is about to burn." The room stirred. Fear, greed, panic. People weren't just watching a family drama anymore. They were watching money catch fire. My father leaned toward me, voice low and urgent. "Madison, listen to me. If you cancel this, you destroy us." I stared at him. "You destroyed us," I whispered back. My mother stepped in, finally dropping the fake sweetness. "If you walk out, you're dead to this family." There it was, the ultimatum, the leash. I looked at Ethan, then at my grandmother, then at the crowd of people who came for a wedding and got a public execution instead. And I asked myself something I want you to think about too. If your family only loves you when you obey, is that love or ownership? I took a breath, and I made the decision they never expected. I stepped up to the microphone. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. "I'm Madison Harrington," I said, eyes scanning the guests, "and I'm not marrying Ryan Whitmore." The room exploded again, but I kept going, louder now. "And if my parents threaten me, cut me off, or smear me," I looked straight at my mother, "I will release everything Ethan brought today." My father's face twisted. "You wouldn't." I smiled through tears. "Oh yes," I whispered, "I would. Because I wasn't their daughter in that moment. I was their consequence." Ryan stepped toward me quickly, voice urgent. "You're making a mistake," he hissed. Ethan moved between us again. Ryan's eyes narrowed. Then he said, "Fine." And he pulled out his phone, tapped once, looked at me, and smiled. "My lawyer just received a package. Guess what's in it?" My blood turned to ice. The video. Ethan's face went hard. "Ryan." Ryan shrugged. "Too late." My grandmother stepped forward. "Madison," she whispered, "don't let them scare you." I closed my eyes, shaking. I felt the room spinning. Then Ethan leaned in, voice calm but fierce. "Look at me," he whispered. I did, and Ethan said the words that changed everything. "Let him release it." "What?" I gasped. Ethan's eyes didn't blink, because the video isn't what they think it is. Ryan's smile faltered. My father froze. My mother whispered, "No."
And I realized whatever that video was, it was about to backfire so hard it would destroy them all.
Ryan hit send. The package went out, and the entire room waited for my life to end. But Ethan didn't flinch, because the video, my parents' leverage, wasn't a scandal. It was evidence. Months ago, when my parents thought they were setting a trap, Ethan had quietly helped me record the truth. My father threatening me, my mother admitting they fabricated the email, Ryan's name coming up like a shadow behind it all. They didn't realize the camera angle caught their faces, their voices, their exact words. So when Ryan released it, he didn't ruin me. He exposed them. Within 48 hours, Harrington Holdings was under public investigation, and the Whitmore deal collapsed so fast, Ryan's firm tried to deny knowing him. My parents lost the only thing they ever worshipped, their reputation. And me? I walked away in my wedding dress, not with a groom, but with my freedom. Ethan didn't ask me to come back. He just said, "Now your life is yours again." So here's my question to you. If you were in my place, would you have finished the wedding to keep the peace, or would you have burned the lies down in front of everyone? If you want more high-tension family revenge stories with twists you don't see coming, hit subscribe right now, because the next story is even darker. And comment below, Team Truth or Team Family Loyalty? What would you choose? Because sometimes the real revenge isn't screaming, it's letting the world finally see who they are.